Betrayal does not only make you question them, it can make you question every instinct you ignored to keep loving them. You replay the conversations. You revisit the moments that felt wrong. You remember the question you almost asked, the boundary you almost set, the truth you almost accepted. And now, what appears obvious in hindsight makes you wonder, how did I explain that away? Why did I keep doubting what I could already see? That is the second betrayal. The first betrayal is what they did to you. The second is discovering how often you abandoned your own perception to preserve the relationship. You saw inconsistency, but called it confusion. You felt disturbed, but called it insecurity. You recognized a pattern, but accepted another promise because hope seemed less painful than truth. Now you are not merely grieving the person. You are grieving the version of yourself who kept surrendering clarity for connection. But let me ask you, are you still spending your strength trying to decode them because examining their motives feels safer than confronting the decisions you postponed? Are you studying every message, every explanation, every contradiction, hoping to understand them completely before you can finally trust yourself again? You do not need to understand everything inside another person before you honor what their conduct has revealed. Your healing has two assignments. You must grieve what they chose, and you must rebuild confidence in what you can choose. One deals with the wound they caused. The other restores the authority you surrendered. And here is the truth. Healing is not learning to suspect everyone. Healing is learning to stop deserting yourself. It is not closing your heart. It is teaching your heart that wisdom must govern access. It is not promising that nobody will ever deceive you again. It is becoming confident that when evidence appears, you will observe it, examine it, and respond. Do not romanticize the pain. What happened hurt. It cost peace, time, confidence, and emotional strength. But the wound does not have to become your identity. Let it become instruction. Let history give you wisdom without giving it ownership of your future. So begin with one simple practice. Write down what you know without explaining it away. Not what you hope, not what you fear, what you have consistently observed. Clarity begins when you give truth permission to stand without immediately defending yourself from it. You are not condemned to remain the person who ignored the warning. You are becoming the person who honors truth with wisdom, establishes boundaries with courage, and keeps small promises to yourself. But to rebuild that trust, you must first understand how a sincere, intelligent person can be gradually trained to doubt what they are plainly observing. You did not miss every warning because you were foolish. In many cases, you noticed the warning, you felt the tension, you asked the question, but then you reinterpreted what you saw because accepting the truth threatened something you still hope to preserve. This is how the cycle begins. A troubling action creates discomfort. Attachment immediately searches for an explanation. The explanation produces temporary relief. A promise restores hope. Then the conduct returns. But when the next alarm sounds, you trust it less than before because you have already trained yourself to silence it. One denial becomes a habit. One excuse becomes an atmosphere. Eventually, you are not merely confused about them. You are disconnected from yourself. Perhaps they were tender after being cruel. Perhaps they became attentive when they sensed you pulling away. Perhaps one beautiful weekend seemed to erase months of instability. You gave the exceptional moment more authority than the established pattern because the moment supported what you wanted to believe. But a pleasant interruption does not automatically represent permanent change. Compassion can deepen this confusion. You remember their pain, their history, their potential, and their intentions. You tell yourself they are struggling. You say they did not mean it. You believe that if you remain patient enough, loving enough, understanding enough, the person they could become will eventually govern the person they repeatedly choose to be. Compassion is a gift, but compassion without discernment can become self-abandonment. Understanding why someone behaves destructively does not require you to remain available for the destruction. Repeated explanations are like fog. Each one may sound reasonable when considered alone. They were tired. They were afraid. They misunderstood. They are trying. But when explanations multiply while conduct remains unchanged, the fog is no longer clarifying reality. It is concealing it. Now ask yourself, what did I observe? What explanation did I accept? What did accepting that explanation require me to silence? And when the same issue returned, Did I judge the pattern or search for another excuse? Your feelings matter, but they are not complete judges. Love may report attachment while evidence reports danger. Hope may report possibility while conduct reports unwillingness. Do not deny either voice. Examine them. Then give repeated reality the weight it deserves. One incident may require patience. A recurring pattern requires judgment. So do not humiliate the person you were. Your hope was not proof that you lacked intelligence. It revealed that you wanted redemption more than rupture. But hope without boundaries cannot govern your future. You did not lose self-trust in one moment. It weakened through a cycle of observation, explanation, relief, and renewed harm. And understanding that cycle brings us to a difficult question. How do you own the moments when you ignored yourself without accepting blame for someone else's deception? There are two extremes that can keep you trapped after betrayal. The first says, none of this has anything to do with me. The second says, everything that happened was my fault. Neither position produces freedom. Another person is responsible for choosing deception. They are responsible for manipulation, dishonesty, and broken trust. You did not cause those choices by being loving, patient, imperfect, or slow to leave. But you are responsible for learning how you responded to the evidence available to you. That distinction is not condemnation. It is authority. Take a sheet of paper and create 5 simple columns. Write what they chose, what I observed, what I explained away, what I feared would happen if I acted, and what I can choose now. Keep their behavior in their column. Keep your response in yours. Do not carry what belongs to them, and do not surrender what belongs to you. Perhaps you delayed because loneliness frightened you. Perhaps you were loyal to the years already invested. Perhaps you believed it was your responsibility to rescue them. Perhaps you wanted to avoid conflict, preserve the family, protect their reputation, or receive their approval. These reasons help explain your response, but they do not have to govern your next one. You see, shame does not sharpen discernment. Shame clouds it. If every mistake becomes evidence that something is fundamentally wrong with you, you will continue searching for another person to tell you what is real. You will distrust your own questions before anyone else has to dismiss them. Stop asking, how could I have been so blind? Ask a wiser question. What made the truth so expensive for me to accept? Then ask, what boundary, support, or preparation would help me act sooner now? Those questions move you from punishment to preparation. Blame stares backward, looking for someone to condemn. Responsibility looks forward for the next decision you can govern. Blame says, you should have known everything. Responsibility says, now that you know more, how will you move differently? That is growth. That is maturity. Mercy does not erase truth, and truth does not cancel compassion. You can show compassion toward the person you were while telling the truth about what you tolerated. You can acknowledge delayed action without accepting guilt for another person's wrongdoing. So stop prosecuting your former self with wisdom gained through suffering. Start training your present self with the wisdom you now possess. You are not the author of another person's betrayal. You are the steward of your next response. And once shame is removed, discernment can become clear. But clarity must still learn an important distinction. Is it responding to present evidence or merely reacting to the echoes of past pain? After trusting too easily, you may be tempted to make a dangerous promise. I will never trust anyone again. It sounds like protection. It feels like control. But a life governed by permanent suspicion is still a life governed by the betrayal. The goal is not to become harder. The goal is to become stronger. Hardness says nobody is safe. Strength says access will be given wisely. Hardness builds a wall and hides behind it. Strength builds a gate, establishes a standard, and decides what evidence must be present before that gate opens. If the wound remains unexamined, memory can disguise itself as discernment. An ordinary delay begins to feel like abandonment. A disagreement feels like rejection. Privacy appears to be secrecy. A human imperfection seems like the beginning of another deception. You may believe you are responding to the person in front of you when you are actually responding to someone who belongs to your past. This is why emotional maturity matters. An emotion is a signal, not a command. It may be telling you that something needs attention, but it cannot determine the verdict before the evidence is examined. When you feel that sudden alarm, pause. Name what you feel. Fear, anger, shame, or uncertainty. Identify the memory it resembles. Then list the facts that belong to this moment, not the assumptions, not the imagined ending, but the observable facts. And if the situation is not immediately dangerous, delay permanent decisions until the emotional storm has settled enough for you to see clearly. Ask yourself 4 questions. What is happening now? What belongs to my past? What evidence supports my concern? What respectful conversation or boundary would bring clarity? That pause is not weakness. It is wisdom creating space between what happened and what you will do next. Compassion for a new person means you refuse to put them on trial for another person's choices. But compassion for yourself means you also refuse to dismiss real inconsistency just because you are afraid of appearing wounded. Do not accuse without evidence, and do not excuse against evidence. You can listen to your emotions without surrendering leadership to them. You can notice concern without predicting disaster. You can ask questions without making accusations. You can observe calmly without becoming passive. Say this to yourself. I will remain open, but I will not be unguarded. I will be cautious, but I will not become cynical. I will be compassionate, but I will not abandon judgment. My past may inform me, but it will not command me. That is balanced discernment. Yet discernment needs a standard. So now we must move beyond impressions, intensity, and promises and establish a practical hierarchy of evidence. Imagine the moment after another painful conflict. The words are beautiful. The apology is emotional. The promise sounds precise. I understand now. I will change. You will never have to question this again. For a few days, everything becomes gentle. Attention returns. Urgency creates effort. Then the urgency passes and ordinary conduct returns. This is the first standard of evidence. Words reveal what a person wants you to understand, but patterns reveal what repeatedly governs their choices. That does not mean one failure defines a human being. People become tired. People misunderstand. People make mistakes. Grace must leave room for growth. But when the same conduct returns without meaningful correction, repetition becomes information. Hope does not have permission to erase it. Do not look for perfection. Look for direction. Is the person becoming more honest, more stable, more responsible? Are they learning from correction? Is the distance between what they say and what they do becoming smaller? Or does the same cycle continue with a different explanation, a stronger promise, and another temporary performance? Here is a practical discipline. Keep a simple pattern record. Write what happened, what was promised afterward, what actually changed, how long that change lasted, and what happened when the pressure or attention disappeared. Do not embellish it. Do not diagnose motives. Record conduct. Why write it down? Because emotional intensity can rearrange memory. A persuasive apology can make yesterday's injury feel less serious. One affectionate evening can overshadow weeks of confusion. Your mind may hold tightly to the moment of relief because relief is what attachment has been craving. Written truth helps you remember the whole pattern when emotion wants to select only the comforting part. Ask yourself, do their actions agree with their declarations? Does their private behavior match the image they present publicly? Does reliability continue when there is no praise, no reward, and no fear of losing access? But be careful. This record is not an invitation to become an investigator obsessed with every detail. It is not ammunition for control. Its purpose is clarity, not surveillance. You are observing repeated reality so you can make a wise decision, not feeding fear until every imperfection appears dangerous. Say it plainly. I will not demand perfection, but I will require alignment between profession and practice. I will listen to words, but I will trust patterns. I will respect potential, but I will make decisions from demonstrated character. Patterns reveal character over time. Yet character becomes even clearer when comfort disappears, when pressure rises, when disappointment arrives, and when you establish a boundary that says no. Pressure reveals what comfort can conceal. When everything is easy, almost anyone can appear patient, generous, and understanding. But frustration exposes how a person manages desire. Disagreement exposes how they handle power. A boundary exposes whether they respect your personhood or merely value your availability. This does not mean distress is forbidden. People become angry, people feel afraid, people experience disappointment. Emotion is human, but intimidation, punishment, distortion, and retaliation are not emotions. They are choices made in response to emotion. So observe what happens when you say no. What happens when you ask an honest question? What happens when they must wait, accept correction, share control, or respect your need for distance? Do they remain capable of conversation, or do they use anger, withdrawal, guilt, and accusation to force your surrender? That response is evidence. A boundary is not a weapon. It is not a hidden test designed to provoke failure. It is a clear statement of what you will permit, what you require for continued relationship, and what you will do to protect your integrity and peace. Understand the difference between a request and a boundary. A request says, please stop speaking to me that way. A boundary says, if this conversation becomes insulting, I will end it and return when respectful communication is possible. A request asks another person to change. A boundary identifies how you will respond if the harmful conduct continues. Watch how your limits are interpreted. Can they discuss them respectfully even when disappointed? Or do they call your boundary cruelty, disloyalty, rejection, or proof that you never cared? When every limit becomes an accusation against your character, guilt becomes a leash. Your compassion is then used to lead you back across a line you established for good reason. Here is a simple formula. Name the conduct without exaggeration. State its impact clearly. Identify the standard required. Then follow through calmly. This happened. This is how it affects the relationship. This is what must change. If it continues, this is what I will do. Do not threaten what you are unwilling to enforce. Do not announce a boundary merely to produce fear. Speak with clarity, act with consistency, and refuse to turn protection into revenge. You are allowed to say no without hatred. You are allowed to protect your dignity without becoming hard. Clarity is not cruelty. A person who values you may dislike a limit, but they will not require your self-abandonment as proof of love. Yet even good people can fail under pressure. So the decisive question is not merely whether harm occurred. The decisive question is what happens after the harm is named. Trust cannot require flawlessness. Every meaningful relationship will eventually encounter misunderstanding, disappointment, and failure. The question is not whether a person ever gets it wrong. The question is whether they possess the character to make it right. Repair reveals readiness. When harm is named, can the person face the truth without changing the subject? Can they listen without attacking the messenger? Can they acknowledge your pain without making their own embarrassment the center of the conversation? A credible repair has a sequence. First comes clear acknowledgement. This is what I did. Then ownership without excuses. It was my responsibility. Then concern for impact. I understand how this affected you. After that comes restitution where possible, safeguards against repetition, and consistent follow-through over time. An apology may begin repair, but it cannot complete it alone. Learn the difference between remorse and regret over consequences. Remorse moves toward the person who was wounded. It wants to understand, restore, and change. Regret over consequences may focus only on lost access, damaged reputation, exposure, inconvenience, or discomfort. One asks, how can I repair what I harmed? The other asks, how quickly can I escape what this has cost me? Do not confuse emotional intensity with transformation. Forgiveness and restored access are also separate decisions. You can release resentment without returning someone to the same position in your life. You can refuse revenge while maintaining distance. You can wish a person well and still recognize that trust has not been rebuilt. Trust should return at the speed of demonstrated change, not at the speed of pressure, tears, promises, spiritual language, or your desire for immediate relief. Grace can be offered freely, but trust carries responsibility and must be supported by evidence. Ask yourself, does this person become curious about the harm? Do they accept reasonable consequences? Do they welcome accountability? Do they make change visible without demanding applause for doing what integrity already required? And remember, healthy repair also asks something of you. Speak directly. Name the harm specifically. Explain what restoration would require. Be willing to recognize genuine progress, but do not call temporary compliance transformation merely because you want the tension to end. This is the full standard. Patterns over promises, responsibility under pressure, respect for limits, and willingness to repair harm. It is humane because it leaves room for growth. It is rigorous because it refuses to call unproven change trustworthy. You can offer grace without abandoning evidence. You can hope for restoration without manufacturing it. Evidence tells you what is present. Boundaries must now determine what level of access that evidence has earned. Love does not require unlimited access. You can care about someone and still restrict their proximity. You can forgive them and still protect private information. You can wish them healing without giving them influence over your decisions. Care may remain even when access must change. A healthy boundary is not a wall built from bitterness. It is a governed gate. A wall assumes everyone must remain outside. A gate recognizes that entrance carries responsibility. It opens according to character, consistency, and respect. This means trust is not all or nothing. There are levels. You can offer basic human goodwill without offering closeness. You can allow limited interaction without sharing vulnerable information. You can cooperate on practical matters without giving someone emotional influence. You can gradually permit vulnerability when evidence supports it. And deep relational access should be reserved for those whose conduct has demonstrated that they can carry it responsibly. Courtesy is not intimacy. Forgiveness is not permission. Familiarity is not entitlement. Someone may deserve respectful treatment while no longer being entitled to your private wounds, your important decisions, or another opportunity to repeat the same harm. Access must correspond to evidence. Your boundaries should also be proportional. A small concern may require observation and an honest conversation. A repeated violation may require reduced contact or reduced information. Serious danger requires decisive protection, appropriate distance, and support from trustworthy people. Wisdom does not treat every concern as a catastrophe, but it does not treat every threat as a misunderstanding. And here is where self-trust is tested. Will you follow through? A boundary repeatedly announced and repeatedly abandoned teaches your mind that your own decisions have no authority. Every time discomfort makes you erase the line, you return to the pattern of deserting yourself. Expect resistance. Guilt may rise. Loneliness may speak. Nostalgia may show you only the beautiful moments. The other person may accuse you of changing, becoming cold, or refusing to forgive. You may feel tempted to reopen access, simply to end the tension. But temporary discomfort is not always a sign that your decision is wrong. Sometimes it is the price of ending an old pattern. Walking away does not have to mean hatred. It may mean you have accepted what repeated reality has shown you. Forgiveness can release the desire for revenge without returning you to the conditions that caused the wound. So make this commitment. I will not use boundaries to punish people. I will use them to protect what I am responsible for stewarding. I will not close my heart, but I will govern access to my life. Boundaries protect self-trust externally, but self-trust is rebuilt internally through the promises you make to yourself and consistently keep. Confidence is not restored by promising that betrayal will never happen again. You cannot control every person, predict every motive, or prevent every disappointment. Confidence grows when you accumulate evidence that, when reality speaks, you will respond faithfully. Every commitment you honor teaches your mind, my decisions have authority. Every time you notice discomfort, examine it, and act with wisdom, you become more dependable to yourself. But when you repeatedly make promises and abandon them under pressure, self-trust weakens. So do not begin with dramatic vows. Do not promise that you will never overlook another warning or make another mistake. Begin small. Choose a commitment you can practice while grief remains, while uncertainty remains, while healing is still incomplete. Use this three-part daily discipline. In the morning, make one realistic promise to yourself, not 10 promises. 1. During the day, pause whenever an internal warning appears, instead of dismissing or immediately obeying it. At night, review whether you honored the promise and examine the commitment. Your promise may be to leave a conversation if it becomes disrespectful. It may be to ask a direct question instead of inventing an explanation. It may be to keep a scheduled period of rest, seek wise counsel, complete a necessary task, or decline access you do not want to give. These decisions look ordinary, but identity is constructed in ordinary moments. Keep a brief written record with 3 prompts. What did I notice? What did I decide? How did I act? You are not creating a record to demand perfection. You are gathering evidence of consistency. Over time, you will see whether your actions are aligning with your judgment. And what if you break a commitment? Do not attack yourself. Acknowledge it. Identify what interfered. Was the promise unclear, unrealistic, or unsupported? Reduce it if necessary. Clarify it. Then practice again immediately. A misstep does not end the journey. Refusing to take the next one does. Build conditions that support wisdom. Seek counsel from people whose character is steady. Create quiet space for reflection. Pray before reacting. Put distance between your mind and voices that repeatedly leave you confused, ashamed, or dependent on their approval. Self-trust is not a mood. It is trained reliability. One honored decision at a time, you establish a standard. Standards practiced repeatedly become character. Character produces confidence, and confidence becomes quiet authority, the settled knowledge that you can depend on yourself to respond. As these small decisions accumulate, one final task remains. Decide who betrayal will produce, not a prisoner of what happened, but a wiser guardian of what comes next. You began this journey replaying the moments when you sensed something was wrong and persuaded yourself to ignore it. But you do not have to remain in that room, holding yesterday's evidence against yesterday's version of you. The past is a reference point for wisdom, not a courtroom for endless self-punishment. Now you understand how self-doubt was trained. You can accept responsibility without carrying another person's blame. You can separate present evidence from painful memory. You can judge patterns, observe conduct under pressure, require sincere repair, and govern access according to demonstrated character. So let me ask you one final question. What truth are you observing right now that you keep asking fear, loneliness, attachment, or emotion for permission to honor? Stop decoding every motive. Start evaluating visible conduct. Stop demanding absolute certainty before you act. Start responding when sufficient evidence is present. Stop promising that you will never be hurt again. Start promising that you will not abandon yourself to preserve another person's comfort. The goal is not invulnerability. It is not perfect prediction. It is not control over another human being. The goal is confidence that you can notice reality, seek wisdom, establish a limit, and act when action becomes necessary. Before this day ends, write 3 things. Write 1 observation you have minimized. Write 1 boundary that would honor what you observed. Then write 1 small promise you can keep within the next 24 hours. Make it clear. Make it realistic. Keep it. You can remain compassionate without becoming careless. You can forgive without reopening every door. You can love without rescuing. You can listen without surrendering judgment. You can remain tender without making yourself available for repeated harm. Now declare this over your life. My feelings will be heard, but they will not be enthroned. Evidence will be honored. Access will be earned. My boundaries will have action. My compassion will have wisdom. My past will instruct me, but it will not govern me. I will not punish myself for what another person chose. I will not surrender my future to what happened in my history. I can observe. I can decide. I can act. Betrayal may have interrupted your self-trust, but it does not possess the authority to define your future. You are still capable of wisdom. You are still capable of peace. You are still capable of purpose and healthy love. Move forward neither suspicious of everyone nor careless with anyone. Honor truth without abandoning compassion. Guard your heart without hardening it. Trust wisely. Act consistently. And become someone you can depend on.